Got it. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you all taking the time out of your schedule. Welcome back to the Network for Youth Successes Power of Three Advocacy webinar series. My name is Gabby Schwartz. I am the policy coordinator here with the Network for Youth Success. Again, thank you all so much for joining us today. We're going to be talking today about meeting with decision makers, becoming an effective advocate. So it's going to be exciting. I do want to let everyone know that, as you heard when you probably entered, we're going to be recording this session today, and then I'm going to share the following webinars we have for the rest of the series, just so you're all aware and clear on that. I'd also like to know a little bit more about who we have joining us here today. So if you could take a quick moment to introduce yourselves in the chat box and where you're joining us from, I'd really appreciate that, so I know who I'm with today. So also, Allie is going to be our moderator. If you have any kind of individual questions or tech-related issues, anything that comes up that you might need help with, go ahead and send her a direct message and she'll be able to help you out. So she is the person to check in with. I also want to note that the training today does not count toward OCFS credit. So if you're here and you're kind of looking for that, just want you to be very clear on that as well. It does not count. So, yep, Natalie introduced herself right in the chat, so go ahead and check that out if you need any help with that. So I'm going to look in the chat box and see who we have joining us. So, hi, June. Nice to see you. Pamela, I recognize Pamela as well. Um, uh, Jordan, sounds like. Okay, cool. We have some folks. Bronx, Triangle Fund. Awesome. Yeah, Onondaga County. Cool. Awesome. We have kind of a spread of folks from around the state, which is always good to see as well. So today we're going to talk about how to effectively meet with and connect with decision makers as advocates. So we're going to explore some of those best practices for crafting and communicating your own advocacy message, kind of discuss some effective tactics for meeting with decision makers, talk about how to meet with legislators in and outside of your program, including site visits, and practice crafting your own advocacy message. We'll have a section where we're going to be doing practicing as well. So before we begin, I want to take a quick minute to introduce who we are and what the Power of Three campaign is. So the Network for Youth Success is the statewide after-school network for New York, working with 49 other state after-school networks and the National After-School Alliance. So we're committed to strengthening the capacity and commitment of communities, programs, and professionals to strengthen after-school programs and increase access to high-quality programs across the state. We're also the state affiliate for the National After-School Association, and we're also the New York State lead for the National Girls Collaborative Project and the backbone agency for the New York State Community Schools Network. So excuse my voice, getting over something. So if I'm coughing a little bit, there's a little bit of grace. So this webinar series is also part of our Power of Three campaign, which is our public awareness campaign on the roles, benefits, and impact of after school. So the goal of this webinar series is to give you insight into the world of advocacy and to empower you to advocate on behalf of after-school summer and expanded learning programs and also the families in your community. You can learn a little bit more about what the Power of Three campaign is, what it looks like, all that other stuff, other opportunities to participate with it at our webpage. So I'm going to drop that in the chat as well so you guys can check that out. So we're going to start off today by talking a little bit about the planning that's involved when you're engaging in advocacy efforts. So really, to begin crafting an effective advocacy strategy, it's really important to think through what you want, how it has to be said, and knowing how to say it to who has to hear it. So it might sound a little bit complex initially. However, advocating and crafting strategies to succeed in that is something that we've been doing since we were young and is something we do every single day. So as a quick example of this, think of a young person in your life. I'm sure a lot of you work with young people. So think of a young person in your life who's trying to get permission from you to do something. So the first step, whether they're consciously doing it or unconsciously doing it, is determining clearly what they're going to ask for. So this can be really vague, like money to go out with friends, or it could be really specific, money to go out to see the new PG-13 movie with their two best friends. So once they're armed with this ask, they're going to move into deciding how they want to say it. So this could be something like they could say it in a text message. They could say it in a formal letter to you. They could ask you directly while you're cooking dinner, or they could yell from 3 rooms over and ask you the question. The third part of this is knowing how to say it to who has to hear it, and relates to how they craft the message to you that will get the most success. So they might really know that you're apprehensive about them going out with friends alone, So they might focus on the safety of the activity and the time that they're going to be home. Or if maybe you haven't had a time to yourself in a while, maybe you haven't had a night off in a little bit and they know that, they might emphasize how nice the time to yourself will be and all the things that you can do with an evening alone. So really deciding on a clear approach to these three questions is really key to formulating a convincing advocacy strategy that has the highest likelihood for success to your audience. So as you continue planning, it's really important to know and consider various components that will influence how you craft your strategy. So first, you're going to decide on what your advocacy goal is or why you want to advocate. This helps you understand what drives your advocacy and helps you stay focused. Stakeholders refer to those that you want to engage in advocacy with. This will be people related to your cause or issue, and in the case of Afterschool, it often refers to the youth and families that participate in your program. Your target are the people who you're trying to reach with your advocacy efforts and have the ability to enact change. So in our example from above, you specifically as the adult were the target for the young person to advocate for or toward. In after school advocacy, the target is often people in government like elected officials. As discussed in our previous workshop, your target could also be a person or entity that has the power to influence a decision maker. So in our example about youth wanting to go to the movies, the could be another adult, for example, one of your friends, a family member, a spouse, or a partner who can advocate on their behalf. So think of a situation where maybe they go to dad first and they get permission and then they hope that he's gonna like back their case when they go to you to say like, I would like to go to the movie. Please give me permission. Dad already said it's fine. Likewise, in our after school advocacy strategy, this could be like a specific community leader or an organization that has influence over decision making as well. So, messaging refers to the advocacy message that you choose to share and how you frame it to your target audience, and to be the most convincing and effective. Tactics are going to help you communicate your advocacy message, but also refer to the tools and activities that are in your arsenal for executing that strategy. And finally, identifying a timeline will help you understand when and how long you want to implement your strategy. There are some advocacy strategies that are going to be a lot more short term because they have an end goal, such as is relevant to this workshop, the state budget asks. Like if you have a state budget ask, they're only really relevant until the budget is passed. Afterwards, they're not as relevant because the budget's already said and done. So there are a lot of types of tools and tactics that you can use to support your advocacy strategy. And while planning, it's really important to identify the tactics you're interested in using. So the most apparent one, contacting your legislators, is useful for directly communicating your message and can be through phone, email, mail, anything like that. You can also inform youth and families about the issue area and your advocacy and give them the knowledge to contact their legislators if they really want to be engaged. This is especially relevant because they are stakeholders in after school, so it's important to kind of get them engaged if you want to be doing advocacy in this space. Inviting legislators to your program for a site visit and visiting legislators at their local in-district office can help you build a relationship through face-to-face interactions. In-district meetings create a space where you can discuss the needs of the community directly with a small group, whereas site visits provide an opportunity for them to see what the program does firsthand and to engage more youth. Site visits can also be a really friendly space where your advocacy might be easier to communicate with the decision maker. Both of these types of visits can help you build relationships with legislators, but we also encourage you to build relationships with other types of decision makers in your community, including local officials, city employees, or school board members. To help streamline communication and follow-ups, we also highly recommend that you identify a spokesperson in your organization to serve as a point of contact, if you can, if it's something feasible. This ensures that your message is consistent and that others understand who to contact to connect with your organization, whether they're media or a decision maker's office. So building a relationship with decision makers is really mutually beneficial for both parties. It's good for you and it's good for them. For the decision maker, after school programs provide insight into issues that are important to families, and they're a direct link to working families in their community. This helps the decision maker stay up to date and aware of their constituents' needs and wants. For after school programs, decision makers are those that have the influence and power to create change, but are also able to champion our issue and raise public awareness. This can even look like a decision maker providing a letter of support to your organization for a grant or recognition. To build those relationships, inviting decision makers to see the program firsthand through site visits, block parties, and lights on celebrations is really, really powerful. I'm going to take a quick minute here to pause, see if anyone has questions. Uh, if you have questions, you can drop them in the chat box. If you're feeling very brave, it is all right also to come off mute if you'd like to. So, however you prefer, I'm going to give a minute because I just went through a lot of information. And I see that Pamela had a question, but Allie answered it. So, and Allie's answer is 100% correct. So, if you have that reference back too. I'll verbally say it as well. Someone had asked, will the presentation be shared? And the response was yes, we're going to share the slides and recording after this webinar. So all of our recordings for this series go up on our YouTube page, and we have kind of spots where you can go through and see specific pieces like timestamps, so you can go to specific spots in the video as well. Give it a minute, see if anyone has questions. Okay, I'm going to assume everyone's good. If you have a question, please put it in the chat. We have other spots where I'm going to stop and ask, so I will go back to the ones that are in the chat box if they're not answered by our moderators already, and I'll probably still verbally note them to you all. So we've talked about the importance of site visits and how they can build connections. I want to shift gears a little bit to explore with you some best practices to make those successful. So site visits specifically are a really good way to show after school in action, like we mentioned earlier. To host a site visit with your decision maker, reaching out to schedule a time for them to come to your program is important to see what you do. We recommend that you work with the staff and youth in your program to help them prepare. Honestly, hosting a hands-on activity with decision makers that youth can participate in with them is a really cool way to involve everyone, and it's active and it's fun, and it gives kind of a chance for organic conversation. So with this, it provides opportunities for youth to speak directly to the decision maker, which is really important. It's a cool opportunity, and it's something they like to hear from youth. So giving those youth a space and chance to talk to them is really important. We also recommend that you alert local media outlets to cover the site visit. So this is a really good way to get information about your program out into the community, and also just uplift the awareness of after school in your community too. You can also then, after your site visit, say they come, they see your program, you have fun, you do a hands-on activity with slime, whatever it might be, you get done, local media covers it, it's a great, awesome success, and then you can follow up with them with a thank you note saying, hey, thank you for joining us, really appreciate you coming to see what we do, and then to continue with that relationship, we also encourage you to continue to invite them to events that you might have, anything that the public can join to kind of foster that relationship. We actually also have a resource that can help you plan a site visit or an in-district meeting, like we mentioned earlier with a legislator, that I'm going to drop in the chat box. So feel free to share this, check this out. It's going to have a lot of resources around how to do this and set these up. So we're going to move along and talk a little bit about the Power 3 campaign. Take a drink of water. So as was previously mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, the Power 3 campaign is the Network for Youth Successes public awareness campaign to raise awareness about the benefits and impact of after school. So the 3 in the Power of 3 refers to 3 p.m., so the time when after school often starts, and the 3 hours typically spent in an after school program. There's also, to help you remember, the 3 categories of expanded learning, after school, summer, and expanded learning programs, and then the 3 benefits of those programs, which we're going to connect with in a minute. So with those 3 benefits, these are usually the key messaging that we often use to ground our advocacy messaging. So when we're developing advocacy messages, we use these kind of 3 points to ground it. So first is the fact that after school programs keep kids safe after the traditional school day ends. Second, after school supports academic achievement and youth development. And third, after school programs help families to balance work and life. They help working families. When you're working on crafting your own messaging, we really encourage you to use those 3 Power 3 talking points as a baseline. So it can be really helpful to choose 1 or 2 of those talking points and then connect to how your program relates to that benefit, that talking point. So for an example of this, if you run a program that uses a lot of STEM learning, You might share information about the activities that you do, maybe robotics or other kind of activities like that fall into that STEM category. And then you're going to connect it back to the talking point, maybe about after school supporting academic achievement, right? So what your program does, followed by kind of how it connects to that point, that benefit of after school. But ultimately, like, you know your program and its strengths the best. So we really encourage you to choose a part of your programming that you most want to highlight and how it adds value to your community. So with the Power 3 talking points as a baseline, you can build your advocacy message using details and information specific to your program. It's also helpful to share this in the form of a story. And if you want more information about how to craft your own story specifically for advocacy to make it the most effective, I really encourage you to check out the recording from our previous sessions. Let me drop the link to the chat, the link to that in the chat as well. Okay. I'm going to pause once more for questions, comments, things that you might want clarity on, maybe anything like that. Please feel free to use the chat box or unmute if you would like to do that. Again, if you're feeling very brave and you want to be here in this space in that way.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Louie. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you perfectly.
Yes. Okay, perfect. So I'm relatively new to the profession of after school. And right now my organization has some advocacy, but it's not to the extent that I think we could um optimize it. So I wanted to ask you what your recommendations were in approaching a space where this may not be familiar with them and kind of like bringing them on board and showing them the highlights of it um, as well. So you're kind of, so I'm threading like all the different communities of support.
Yeah, so if I'm understanding your question correctly, my first response is going to be a little bit of a plug, which is going to be
Yes,
sending them the recordings that we have so they kind of get familiar
yes.
with that, like,
Mm-hmm.
idea. But other than that, I think in terms of trying to kind of get people on board or maybe see the importance of advocacy, really expressing that a big piece of advocacy is informing. It's educating, it's giving
Mm-hmm.
people information about, you know, what these programs can do, the benefit that they have, um, and kind of getting an awareness, maybe like building a public awareness of that. So
Okay.
maybe approaching it from that angle is kind of the easiest, in my mind, starting point to communicate what this really looks like and what it is, and kind of demystify the idea of doing advocacy, because sometimes advocacy work can feel daunting. It can feel a little bit intimidating for people. I know I used to feel that way, especially talking to a legislator can feel strange. But kind of centering back on that idea that you're really there to inform them, to give information, and that benefits everyone. That gets more awareness out about what after school does, really what it looks like. And if it's something you really care about, you want people to know how much it benefits the community, how strongly it is, and then to have that support that's equal to the benefit that it gives. So really kind of in my mind, the first piece that helps with demystifying or kind of getting people to understand a little bit about what this looks like is starting on the base of it's the role of educating. It's educating people, your community, not just legislators necessarily, but also people around you from other organizations. And then moving forward with that, if you're trying to set up a meeting or maybe do a site visit or something like that, that feels maybe a little daunting, and they're a little apprehensive, just expressing legislators are people. They are, and their job is to work for you. Their job at its core is to help their constituents and help the folks that live in their community. And they just need to be communicated to about what those values really are and what's really important to the people that they serve. So I hope that's helpful. I hope that's a helpful kind
Yeah.
of run through, maybe.
Mhm.
Um,
Yes, it is.
awesome, awesome. Okay. Thank you.
Thank
That's
you.
a really good question. I'm really glad you asked because I think it's hard to kind of get people motivated to do this work, especially when there's so many other competing priorities as well.
Mhm. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Okay. Does anyone else have any further questions as well? If not, we'll keep moving right along. Okay, I'm going to move us along. As I said before, please drop them in the chat and we'll connect back about them as we keep going. So we're
Yeah,
going,
Gary,
oh yeah,
I
Trudy,
just
go
wanted to
ahead.
add one more thing too.
Yeah.
Exactly to your point, and I think you talked about it early on, right? It's that every day we are doing some kind of advocacy, and normally how I like to also think about it is also about selling the value of what you offer. So, if you think about it from that perspective, how you probably talk to parents or families when you want folks to come to your program. You take a similar approach when talking to decision makers as well. And then the other thing too, I would say, especially if you're kind of like starting off or trying to get your feet a little bit deeper into like advocacy work, is also look at the different partners you have. It's possible that there are partners that are already involved. So maybe it's not a matter of like reinventing the wheel, but thinking about how you can connect with them by like co-facilitating or co-hosting opportunities that bring decision makers together. So that again, you're not taking a lot of capacity to do things on your own. And then the last thing I'll also say is that oftentimes the parents and families that you engage with in your programs have connections that you might not have even expected. So as you build those relationships with your families, um, you can also explore in terms of the connections they have, the leverage they have, whether it's maybe they are in their role like a school board member or like involved in the PTA. So all those could be avenues for leveraging other supports to really help bolster your own advocacy efforts. So um, it's pragmatic steps to get to that point where you might probably feel like, okay, as an organization, we have a fuller and deeper grasp of advocacy work. But at its core, exactly to Gabby's point, I think every single day in little ways we are doing advocacy, and it's important to recognize that as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Trudy. No, I really appreciate Trudy's contribution on that because she's 100% right. And building that perspective about building systems almost and how to do that, how to effectively kind of build that out with the folks that are already around you and in your community is also a really important point. And hammering in what Trudy just said, we're doing this every day already. This is something that people actually are a lot more familiar with than they maybe think, or they have a lot more strengths in than they might necessarily initially think that they do, because it's something we do and we've been doing since we were so young. I mean, who hasn't been in an argument with like a 4-year-old about them wanting to do something and they're making their case and you're like, this is not the strongest case in the world. But they're doing it at that young age, they're building that skill. It's a similar thing. It's just we're adults now and we have other things that we care about to check out. So yeah, thank you so much, Trudy. And that's a great question. I'm so glad that we kind of went over that because I think it's really important to consider. So now I'm gonna move us along again. We're going to talk a bit about, so you've done the planning, and now we're going to talk about how you start to implement that advocacy strategy through actually meeting with decision makers and what that looks like. So there are some steps that we really encourage you to take before you actually ever meet with your legislator. So you're going to want to start by doing some research about the decision maker that you plan to meet with. So you're going to ask yourself some questions like, what can you learn about them that would make them invested in or excited about after school? What issue areas are of interest to them already? What committees do they serve on? Questions kind of like this, just about who they are and what they're interested in. So this can give you a lot of insight about what can help you craft the most effective message about after school to them specifically. So for an example of some kind of background information, Assemblywoman Pamela Hunter of Syracuse has a son, so interested maybe in youth kind of issues because of that, and cares a great deal about crime reduction, which after school helps with. So you can then reach out to the decision maker's office through phone, email, or another method of the office that the office uses. So oftentimes offices will use things like Calendly or Google Forms to help you submit. Oftentimes if you send them an email, they'll respond back saying like, please fill out this Google form to do a meeting with us. And it's pretty easy. You just follow with what their preference is. It can be a little bit different depending on the office. So after your initial contact with them, you can introduce yourself as a constituent and the program that you work with. Then you're going to want to request a time and date to meet with them. We recommend giving them a range of dates and times because they tend to be kind of busy. A range of dates of times that you are available. You can then take some time to invite youth or families to participate in the meeting to share their experience with after school and what it looks like for them. And if you want a little more information about kind of the best practices for engaging youth and family and advocacy and kind of what that looks like, I'm going to drop a link to our other webinar in the chat as well that we did. And this really just refers to if you're trying to engage students and youth and family, what are the best ways to do that are going to be the most effective? And some pitfalls to avoid. We also go through that as well. So also, to avoid confusion, it's really important to discuss with the folks that are going to be joining you about what it's going to look like, the order you're going to speak in, all that, all those kind of logistic pieces. So you're not talking over each other. So this should, as I mentioned, include a speaking order, who's going to go first, second, third, and then who's going to share what. So you don't need to guide. If you have a student joining you, you don't want to necessarily tell them, okay, you're going to start talking about X, right? You want to let them decide what they're going to speak about. But if they say, I really want to talk about the arts program we did the other day or the dance routine we did the other day, you can kind of flag that to say, okay, they're going to talk about that. So you have an idea about what's going to be said in the meeting. So once you secure the meeting and you're in the room with the decision maker or their staff, you can start by introducing yourself and the others that are joining you, including what program you're from. And then you'll want to take some time to tell the decision maker about the program that you're part of and the types of benefits it provides to youth and families. This is a great opportunity to refer back to the Power of Three talking points as your starting point and then adding specifics about your program. We also encourage you to bring photos of your program or materials about the impact of your program to leave with that office as well. So they have something physical that shows the information that you shared. So when you're sharing about the program, you'll also want to allow time for the youth and families to share their authentic experience. This will make the step of discussing with those that are joining you and deciding a speaking order especially important. So, person A is going first, person B is going second, and so on and so forth. We also encourage you to ask to take a photo with the staff person or the decision maker that you meet with to post to social media, and then close the meeting with an invitation for them to come visit your program. So after you conclude and the meeting is done and you're back home and you've done it, it's really important to send a thank you letter to the office. So this can be an email and pretty simple. And this is also a really good opportunity to send information about your programs again, send another invitation for them to come visit your actual program itself. If you're able to take a photo for social media, go ahead and post it. Make sure to tag the office that you met with. They like that. They tend to reshare them. It's pretty good press for them to be your new program. As the time goes on, it'll also be beneficial to maintain that relationship with the office through just continuous invites to the local community events that you're throwing, such as lights on celebrations or block parties. A staff member from the program or from the office might join. It might be the decision maker again. But it's just good to keep that line of communication open to allow them to continue to see you and talk to you. So I'm going to pause once more for questions. As before, this is old hat now. Chat, go ahead and unmute, whatever you prefer.
I have one question again. So I know that Advocacy Day on January 30th is happening. At least for my program personally, I won't be able to bring any participants, just because of the distance and timing and all. So I'm hoping that I can have other materials, but are there roles that will be laid out for that day for folks that are participating? I know that I read a little bit about the itinerary, but will we also be having like a prep meeting essentially to talk about what we hope to share and discuss that, or are we meeting earlier that morning to do that? I just want to have a better understanding and be better equipped.
Yeah, of course. And we're going to talk also about Advocacy Day a little bit later, but
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Sorry,
no,
I'm
no,
getting
no,
ahead.
no. This is a great question. We will have a prep call for Advocacy Day participants. So everyone who registers, we're going to have a prep call so you can come join, ask questions. We're going to kind of run through what this looks like and see what it feels like and the expectations for the day. We're going to send email communications to those who are registered with that information. We'll continuously send information as it comes closer. And in terms of with Advocacy Day and these meetings, we will have group leaders. So you're going to be grouped into folks who are from your region, generally folks who are kind of from your area, and you'll have a group leader who's an experienced advocate, who's going to be the person to talk with you, kind of talk about strategy, talk about who's going to speak when, what you're kind of interested in sharing, and you can ask them questions and they can be your go-to. So that's kind of what that looks like. And we will have a prep call that will go over all this information. So we won't leave you in the dark, don't worry. Awesome. Yeah, of course. Awesome. Does anyone else have any further questions? Okay, I'm gonna let us move. And then again, as mentioned in the chat box, but we're moving into an activity now. So y'all are gonna be able to practice a little bit. So we are going to do an activity to help you practice these skills. So we're going to break you into groups and send you into breakout rooms where you're going to plan to address the following scenario. So it's up on the slide. I'm going to read it, and then I'm also going to send you all a material. So it has the instructions on it. So you'll have this in multiple places. Please don't worry about screenshotting or trying to jot this down really quickly. I'm going to give you a copy. So you and your group are meeting with your state assembly member to talk about after school, and you need to take the time to create a strategy to advocate for additional funding for after school programs in the state budget. So for this scenario, we're going to assume that you work at an after school program in your community. That's the assumption, is that you work there and you are a staff person who's at the program. So we want you to create an advocacy strategy with the following details about your assembly member in mind. So this is that kind of background work that I was talking about before. So this assembly member that you're meeting with is a member of the Children and Families Committee. They are interested in supporting working families and addressing food insecurity in the community. They are unfamiliar with after school as an issue area, and your program is in their district. So these are kind of your 4 main pieces about your legislator that you have. So for this activity, we're going to be putting you into breakout rooms where you'll have 15 minutes to complete the tasks. Your task will be to develop talking points for the meeting with your state assembly member and to work together to develop a strategy for meeting with that state assembly member. You'll then come back to us and share your ideas with us to discuss. So you're going to give me an idea about kind of what talking points you came up with, what your strategy was, and we'll talk through and kind of workshop it and see how it feels. So here is a Google Doc with the information. Oh, okay. Thank you for letting us know, Pam. It's totally okay. I totally understand. Got a lot of things going on this time of year. So these are the instructions. I'm going to pause before we get going and see if anyone has any questions. Okay. All right. Everyone is quiet, which I'm going to assume means that we're good. I am going to, I'm like talking really slow, but okay. Allie's giving me a thumbs up. Do you have the breakout rooms prepared? Okay, cool. So, awesome. Allie is going to open that up. We're going to put you into breakouts now. If you have any questions, well, ask them now. Let me know, please. Okay, I'm going to put you into breakouts. Hope that was good. Thank you for restarting our recording. Seeing as everyone used that last like 60 seconds, I'm imagining people were having conversations, I hope. So welcome back. Thank you all again for participating. And I'm gonna jump right into it. So what kind of talking points and did you all develop? What kind of talking points did your group develop? What was your strategy? Give me your thoughts, your feelings. What kind of stuff did you come up with? I'm gonna put that question in the chat box. You can share in the chat, you can unmute. It is up to you.
So I will go ahead and speak. Individuals that were in my group, feel free to jump in if I miss anything. So we really talked about strategy a lot and ensuring that we thought it would be great to have the individuals that we service, if we had the organization, be the opener so that they can start with a story and really show the impact of the organization. We also shared how having, the parents as well as the youth involved and sharing from their lens what the need is and why there is a need for the after school program. So we really wanted to show impact, the outcomes, as well as the what's needed and why we need these things within the community. We also talked about, we had a conversation about the constituents being present, because they were the voters. So having them present as well to hear the stories is going to be key. And then I want to say we talked about one more thing. But being able to make those connections, I know for the example, they talked about like food insecurities and desert. So maybe that is something that is connected. That way you can, find that personal connection of interest. So
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Ashley. That's awesome. I very few notes on that. I don't I think starting out with that kind of you want to introduce yourself, but then launching right into like someone from the program sharing the direct impact or like a family that benefits. It's an amazing approach, right? That's going to stick with people. That's really going to get them to understand what this looks like, how this feels. And centering that voice and centering those experiences is really important to help them understand. And again, just uplifting the voices of the people who are really impacted by the program is a really, really important piece to keep in mind. And then, yeah, connecting it back with that idea of food insecurity, like maybe your program does healthy snacks, right? Hey, it's related to that kind of food piece. And you can kind of have a conversation about that because this legislator cares about it. And like when you also enter the space with your families coming in, this legislator cares about helping working families. So if they're talking about how this helps them and how this is beneficial, that's a really good, strong starting point to showing impact. So I think that's a really good way to frame the conversation. Thank you so much, Ashley. And Ashley's group, I know you were speaking on behalf of your whole team, so
yes,
that's great.
Scott and Janice.
Yeah, and Janice. Okay, cool. Thank you. Yeah. Anyone else want to share their thoughts, what they kind of came up with?
Yeah, I wanted to share a little bit of my conversation with Jordan.
Mhm.
So I started by speaking to my experience of after school and noticing its growing impact, not only in my own personal life, like working in it professionally, but also in the lives of other participants, other teachers that have been here for a long time and have seen kids grow up in the space and then work in after school themselves and then expand outward into other bigger, more substantive roles. For me, what I noticed in terms of the way that we developed our talking points is I started kind of with the experience of it, really like focusing on the unfamiliarity of this specific legislator with after school, since one of the points was that he's not very familiar with it. And I think a lot of people aren't familiar with it until they are, and then they see the impact that it can have. So I thought that was big. But then Jordan brought up a really good point about the food insecurity and the struggles, including with my own program, about being able to supply kids with enough snacks and also during dinner time, a period of time where they would be very hungry, and kind of making that our ask. Because it appears to be a big issue for this legislator here that we have in the prompt. So I thought that was a really good point by Jordan, that she focused on that point. That is something that he or she is trying to address, that I want to take with me going forward.
Yeah. And both of those things are fantastic approaches. So I think noting that they're not familiar and starting with that story about what the impact looks like and how your journey looks in this space is a really good way to kind of get that person aware of what's going on. And then connecting back with the food insecurity and recognizing how after school connects with that. And you could even extrapolate that further to say, we really want you to fund after school programs more. Like there's this ask in the state budget, like please fund after school programs in the state budget. And if you do, here are some of the things that after school programs can do. They, the youth are there during dinner time, so it's an opportunity for them to have kind of a dinner. They provide snacks. So connecting that, saying like, if you fund after school, this is something that after school can help you achieve and do that you are interested in, and creating that direct kind of line of what after school can do if it's kind of harnessed in a way that can help with those issue areas. So connecting it to those issue areas that people might be interested in is a really powerful way to connect that ask. So I love hearing this. This is all really important. We do have only a few more minutes, so I'm going to speed us along. If anyone has any kind of thoughts in the chat box they want to share, please do, because this is really important. what I'm going to do is we're going to kind of move through the rest of these things pretty quickly. So I'm going to prioritize what we're going to do. So my person sharing the screen is going to be following my energy here. So this is, I'm going to not necessarily go through all of these because there's something that we talked about this a little bit already and kind of connected to some of these pieces. But this is just some of the way that we connected with those talking points, and maybe a few that I quickly came up with, not thinking of a specific program. I think you guys were a little more specific, which is really helpful. And you thought about your own experiences, which is exactly what you should be doing in this space. So again, we do share the slides and share this information so you can kind of read through the ones that we came up with, but I also will encourage you to think about what the folks here shared, because those are really helpful and important as well. In terms of the strategy piece, what we discovered, again, I'm going to run through this quickly because on this, with our strategy, we really just kind of walked through what you might want to be thinking about, how you might want to consider, once you're in the room, what that'll look like. So these are broad strokes. So really we just have in here developing who your leader or speaking order is going to be, kind of who's going to talk first, and how you're going to move through that. Having someone introduce your group and why you're there, who you are. Then have other members of your group share about their program using your talking points. So this is where you'd share your story, or you'd have someone come in and share, a student come in and share about their experience, or a parent. Then you have someone who's designated to present your asks. This is usually the person who's leading the meeting, would say like, okay, so you've heard all of what we have to say. Please fund after school. Please fund it because it can do X, Y, and Z. And then of course, you close your meeting by thanking them and you invite them to visit your program. It's really important. You want to keep kind of cultivating this relationship and make sure that they know that you're there to help them with the work that they're going to do. So that's my really quick run through again. I got bulleted right there. Some tips I really want to share with you all before we close today that you want to keep in mind while you're doing this kind of work. So you are the after school expert in the room. These people rely on you to get information about their district and about what's going on. You know the most about after school compared to the folks that you're meeting with. Just know that for sure all the time. You know how they add value. So decision makers are part of that community too. So don't feel too worried about who they are. They are people and you're just there to talk to them and they're interested in knowing what's going on. If you find that you don't know the answer to a question they ask, maybe they ask something hyper specific about some really like close data point and you're like, I'm not sure, I don't have that on me. Don't panic. It's okay. You can always tell them, I'm not sure at this time, but I can try to follow up with information on that. Easy as that. Staff members, if you get a meeting with a staff member, just know that they are key to this work. They are really important. You're not being thrown kind of to the side if you are met with a staff member from the office. They usually are the people who get the work done. They keep track of issue areas for elected officials, so they can be really important to getting your advocacy message across. And always remember, your voice is needed to enact change in your community. It's so important that you're doing this work, and it's so important that you came to join us today. It's my really, again, quick run through the tips. Advocacy Day, we mentioned it before. Allie has shared in the chat box. We have a web page. It gives you kind of a run through of what Advocacy Day is, how it looks, information. If you are already registered, please check that out. If you are not registered, you can also check it out to get you an idea about what's going to be going on. And if you haven't registered and this motivated you, please feel free to register there too. And then Allie is sharing in the chat right now, but we have some resources you can check out. Our Power 3 lister to keep updated about what we're doing, my contact, and then we have some resource lists for you guys to check out as well that has all the resources that we've shared from this workshop. I ran through that very quickly. I am so sorry for going so fast at the end. It is recorded, so please feel free to go back. I am going to have to close this out right on time this time, but please use the email that I dropped in the chat. If you have follow-up questions, send me an email. It is totally okay. If you want to know more about Advocacy Day, anything like that, shoot me an email. I will respond. It's okay. Thank you all for joining me. Sorry for talking so fast at the end. I really appreciate you all being here. Bye.